Okay, so here's a picture you may remember from previous exercises. This one we're going to use to take a look at the Blur, Smudge, and Sharpen tool. These are docked right underneath your gradient and may look like a droplet, a triangle, or a finger, so if you click on it you can see all the options. Let's start with the Blur tool. This will affect the layer directly, so it's probably a good idea to make a copy of your layer, Command J, and work on a copy so that you can come back to the original if you need to. Blur does exactly what it says it does. You can set how strong the blur is up here in the options, and if you click and drag, it will start blurring that information. So remember, before we've copied a layer and then gone to filter, blur, and use Gaussian, and then use layer masks to mask out the areas that we wanted. But if you wanted to directly affect a layer and the clarity on it, this would be a good tool to use. We have the opposite of that tool in the Sharpen. So the one that looks like a triangle, you can choose that, and again there's a strength setting. Now this one I'm going to zoom in pretty close so you can see exactly what it's doing. When I click and drag over the Sharpen and just continually go back and forth, eventually it reaches that like, whoa, way out there stage, and you need to back up a little bit. But clicking and dragging once with the strength set to about 50, what it does is it kind of goes in like you were doing a levels adjustment, contrast and brightness, and it sharpens all of that information to bring out the detail just a little bit more. So maybe on her eye would be a good spot to sharpen. And keep in mind, every time I click, it's getting a little bit stronger, and eventually it'll get too strong. So right there where it starts looking really sharp and pixely, that's too strong. And you want to back up from that. So Command Option Z to step back. So let's flip between this layer and our original so you can see the difference. So not a huge drastic difference, but a little bit of a difference. Now the last one in this set really only comes in useful for pretty specific things. If you click and choose the Smudge tool, and again we've got our strength set, Smudge does just what it says it does. It takes the pixel information and scooches it whichever way you are pushing your brush. And it's not especially a fine control tool like Liquify will retain the pixel information. Smudge will not. It will destroy the pixel information and it won't move it cleanly. You can see it's really just getting rid of a lot of that. So I usually, if I use the Smudge tool, it's more to soften edges. So if I've copied something onto a background, you know how sometimes you get a sharp edge left from your selection? That's when that tool might come in a little bit handy to smudge things around. Or if I wanted, for example, on her furry hat to maybe make it look just a little more fuzzy around the edge, I could use it there. Obviously the size of my brush is going to affect how that looks. A smaller brush might give it more of a natural fuzzy look. So now if I zoom in, you can see right here I can, oh, I keep doing that, grabbing my regular brush tool, sorry. Grab my Smudge tool, and I can increase the strength. This is one tool you probably won't ever use at 100% strength, because if you crank it all the way up to 100%, you pretty much get an indefinite line of color that'll just drag in from wherever you're at. So really with the Smudge tool, you use it more like at 45 or something. Yeah, there's that. Let's set up a quick example. Make a new layer, grab your marquee tool, and just create a box and fill it with some color. Make another new layer and do the same thing, but fill it with a different color. So right now that Smudge tool, for example, is set so that it will only affect the layer that it's on, and I know that because the sample all layers is not on. So if I'm on my layer that has my yellow box and start smudging around on it, it will affect the edge of that box. But when I click and drag that object away, it doesn't take any of the surrounding color with it. So it's literally only smudging the pixels on that box. If I wanted to include information from the other layers around it, I would have to turn on the sample all layers option. So now when I do the same thing, and yeah, it looks about the same. I did increase my brush size. and then I grab that layer to move it, you can see as soon as I move it, it looks very out of place because that smudge was transferring information from other layers around it. So mostly I'm just showing you this option so you won't ever use it accidentally and become really frustrated. If your smudge is looking like this, where it moves with the layer, you need to come back into your settings and change it so that it's not sampling all layers. And I actually believe that the blur has a similar, as well as the sharpen. So anytime you have that sort of picking up from other layers, if you don't want it, look for that and turn it off. So there you go. That is the blur, sharpen, and the smudge tools.